Some feelings arrive so quietly you don't notice them at first. They settle in like morning fog, soft and subtle, until one day you realize they've been there all along, changing everything. My name is Melissa, and this is the story of how a fragrance became the thread that unraveled everything I thought I understood about boundaries, feelings, and the complicated space between wanting something and knowing you shouldn't. I work at a marketing firm in Portland, one of those sleek offices with glass walls and motivational posters that nobody actually reads. It's a good job, interesting, clients, creative work, colleagues I genuinely like. And then there's Daniel. Daniel started 6 months before this story really begins. He's the kind of person who makes a room feel calmer just by entering it. He doesn't talk over people in meetings. He remembers details about conversations from weeks ago. When he asks how you're doing, you can tell he actually wants to know. We became friends easily. Coffee breaks turned into lunch conversations. Work discussions evolved into talks about books, movies, the small philosophies we carry through life. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that crossed lines. Except there was one small detail that complicated everything. Daniel had a girlfriend. Everyone knew it. He mentioned her casually, the way people do when they're settled and comfortable, and I respected that completely. I would never, could never interfere with someone else's relationship. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something. Part 2, the fragrance. There was this scent that always clung to Daniel, especially in the mornings. Something floral and warm, with notes of vanilla and something I couldn't quite place. It would drift past my desk whenever he walked by, leaving traces in the air. I knew what it was, of course. His girlfriend's perfume transferred from morning hugs or shared pillows or all the small intimacies that come with loving someone. At first, I barely noticed. Then I started recognizing it. The particular sweetness that meant he'd been close to someone before arriving at work. The scent became a reminder that he belonged to someone else, that there was a whole part of his life I'd never be part of. I told myself it didn't matter, that what I felt was just appreciation for a good friend, that I was mature enough to have boundaries. But the heart doesn't always listen to reason. One evening after a particularly long day, I stopped by a department store on my way home. I was just killing time, wandering through the beauty section without any real purpose. Then I passed the perfume counter and my breath caught. There it was. The exact scent I'd been noticing on Daniel for months. I recognized it instantly, that particular combination of warmth and sweetness that had become so familiar. I stood there for a long moment, my heart doing something complicated and confusing. A sales associate asked if I wanted to try it, and before I could think better of it, I nodded. She sprayed it on my wrist, and suddenly I was surrounded by something that felt both intimate and foreign. This was the fragrance that lived in Daniel's mornings. This was what his girlfriend wore when she kissed him goodbye. I should have walked away. I should have recognized how strange this impulse was. But instead, I bought it. Not because I wanted to be her. Not because I was trying to seduce anyone. I bought it because I wanted to understand. I wanted to know what drew him to that particular scent. What memory it held for him. Why it seemed to follow him through his days. Part 3, the shift. The next morning, I woke up with my stomach in knots. I'd sprayed the perfume before bed, and my apartment still carried traces of it. It felt like I'd crossed some invisible line, even though logically I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. People wear perfume, it's normal, there's no law against buying the same fragrance someone else wears. But it felt significant in a way I couldn't quite articulate. I got ready for work carefully, applying just a light amount, enough to notice if you were close, not enough to announce itself across a room. I told myself Daniel wouldn't even register it. He was always so focused on work, so professional. What were the chances he'd even notice? But the universe, it seems, has a sense of humor about these things. I was walking past Daniel's desk mid-morning when I saw him pause. His head turned slightly and his expression shifted, not dramatically but enough that I noticed. His brow furrowed like he was trying to place a memory that had suddenly surfaced. Our eyes met for just a moment, and I felt my heart do something acrobatic in my chest. He didn't say anything. Just gave me a small, uncertain smile before returning to his computer. But I knew. In that brief exchange, something had registered with him. I spent the rest of the morning hyper-aware of every interaction. Daniel glanced at me more than usual, not in any inappropriate way, but with a kind of curious confusion, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't quite understand. At lunch, he chose to sit at my table even though other seats were available. We talked about work, about the project we were both assigned to, about nothing particularly significant. But underneath the ordinary conversation, I felt something electric and unspoken. Whatever I'd set in motion by wearing that perfume, there was no taking it back now. Part 4, the conversation. 3 days passed. 3 days of stolen glances and careful professionalism. 3 days of Daniel seeming more aware of my presence than he'd ever been before. Then, on Thursday afternoon, as I was packing up to leave, he appeared beside my desk. "Melissa," he said quietly, "can we talk for a minute?" My stomach dropped. Of course. We walked to a quiet corner near the windows overlooking the city. The late afternoon light painted everything in gold, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't see. "This might sound strange," Daniel began, running a hand through his hair, "but I've been noticing something this week. A scent, actually. And it's been driving me a little crazy trying to figure out why it feels so familiar." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "It's probably just my perfume. Scents can trigger memories. It's completely normal." "Maybe," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. "But it's more than that. I've been noticing other things too. Not because I should, just because I am." The honesty in his voice made something in my chest tighten. "Daniel," I said carefully, "you have a girlfriend. You shouldn't confuse yourself because of one random week." He nodded slowly. "I know, and I would never do anything to betray that. But this week made me realize I've been working really hard not to notice certain things, and I don't know if that's fair to anyone, to her, to myself, or to you." Part 5, the truth. We talked for almost an hour. Not about anything scandalous or inappropriate. Honest conversation about feelings we'd both been carefully avoiding. Daniel admitted he'd been feeling disconnected from his relationship for months. Not unhappy exactly, but not growing either. Just comfortable and stagnant. I told him about recognizing the perfume, about the strange impulse to buy it, about not fully understanding my own motivations. "I didn't do it to manipulate you or get your attention," I said. "I think I just wanted to understand something I couldn't quite reach." "Does that make sense?" "It does," he said softly. "And honestly, that's what makes it matter. You weren't trying to be someone else. You were just being you, trying to understand a feeling you couldn't quite name." As the city lights began to flicker on below us, Daniel said something that shifted everything. "I need to figure some things out, and I need to do that honestly, without dragging anyone into confusion or half-truths. Whatever I'm feeling, whatever this is, I need to understand it clearly before making any decisions." "That's the right thing to do," I told him, meaning it. "But I also need you to know," he continued, "that whatever happens, the connection I feel with you isn't my imagination. It's real, and I owe it to everyone involved, especially her, to acknowledge that rather than pretend it doesn't exist." Part 6, the waiting. 2 weeks passed. Daniel kept appropriate distance at work, and I respected that completely. We were professional, friendly, but careful not to venture into anything that felt like more. I assumed he was working things out with his girlfriend, trying to salvage what they had. Part of me hoped for that outcome. The clean, guilt-free resolution where no one got hurt. But another part of me couldn't stop hoping for something else. Then, on a Monday morning, Daniel walked into the office looking different, lighter somehow, like he'd set down a burden he'd been carrying for too long. And for the first time since I'd known him, the scent of that perfume wasn't clinging to his clothes. Part 7, a new beginning. At lunch that day, Daniel asked if we could talk again. This time, his demeanor was calmer, more certain. "I ended my relationship," he said simply. Not impulsively and not because of one confusing week. But because I finally admitted to myself that we weren't growing. We were just existing side by side, comfortable but not alive. I felt a complicated swirl of emotions. Relief, guilt, fear, hope all tangled together. "Before you worry," he added quickly, "this wasn't about you specifically. This was about me finally being honest about what I need and what I'm capable of giving." The situation with the perfume just made me confront something I'd been avoiding. "You don't have to explain this to me," I said softly. "I do," he insisted, "because I want to be clear about something. I'm not looking to jump from one relationship into another. I need time to understand myself better. But I also need you to know that what I feel when I'm around you, that connection, it's real. And I didn't want to ignore it or pretend it's something other than what it is." He reached his hand across the table, not grabbing mine, just offering, palm up, open, patient. "I don't have expectations," he said. "I just want to be honest. About everything. About how I feel, about what I'm hoping for, about being willing to take time and do this right if there's a this to do it all." I looked at his hand, at the genuine openness in his expression, and felt something settle in my chest. Not wild excitement or dramatic passion, just something steady and true. Slowly, I placed my hand in his. Epilogue, what really matters. That was 4 months ago. Daniel and I have been seeing each other since then, carefully, honestly, taking our time. We've talked a lot about how we got here, about the perfume incident that seems almost absurd now, about the complicated ethics of developing feelings while someone's in a relationship. I've learned that connection is more complex than simple rules and boundaries, that sometimes feelings develop even when you're doing everything right, that the important thing isn't preventing attraction, but handling it with integrity. The perfume? I still have it, though I rarely wear it anymore. It served its purpose, not as some kind of love potion or manipulation, but as a catalyst that made us both acknowledge something we'd been carefully ignoring. Daniel bought me a different fragrance for my birthday. Something that's just mine, not borrowed from someone else's story. Something that belongs to this new chapter we're writing together. Because that's what matters in the end. Not how feelings begin, but what you choose to do with them. Not the perfect adherence to rules, but the honest navigation of complicated human emotions. We took our time, we were respectful, we didn't rush into anything while emotions were confused, and now when he passes my desk and catches the scent of my perfume, it's not a reminder of someone else. It's just us. Two people who found each other through honesty, patience, and the courage to acknowledge something real when it appeared. Some stories don't have villains or heroes, just people doing their best to be honest in situations that don't come with clear answers. This is one of those stories.